Go up.
The Select Committee on China tackling some key concerns last night at a hearing on countering the Chinese Communist Party's economic aggression. The committee addressing CCP raids on Western consulting firms, legislation aimed at protecting U.S. farmland, the theft of U.S. military innovations, cyber espionage, and the importance of outcompeting China in emerging technologies. Former Google CEO Eric Schmidt testifying that the CCP aims to achieve global dominance through technology supremacy.
This, in my view, is the defining competition of our time. This is my opinion. For the rest of our lives, we're going to be dealing with this. I want us to win.
You're out.
And joining us now is Congressman Mike Gallagher, chairman of the China Select Committee, and Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi. He is a lead Democrat on the committee. Welcome to you both. Hey, gentlemen, are you guys like finishing each other's sentences on this? Is this totally, there's no difference, I don't think, or there's not a lot of difference between the two sides of the aisle on what the problem is and how to deal with it. Is there, Congressman Gallagher?
Well, I think we have a shared sense of the threat and shared concerns about growing economic and technological aggression by the Chinese Communist Party. We had a robust debate last night about what the best way to combat that threat, but some things I think are obvious and are areas where we can have bipartisan cooperation. For example, fixing the de minimis loophole when it comes to compliance with the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act was something we heard about last night. I think there's a shared sense that we don't want to be in the business of funding our own destruction, and that there need to be some guardrails on outbound capital flows to China, particularly for companies like Baidu that are trying to beat America in this AI race, which has profound implications, as you heard from former Google CEO Eric Schmidt.
Congressman Krishnamoorthi, we like competition everywhere, but it would be nice if one or the other sides didn't cheat, didn't steal secrets, didn't have a whole cottage industry based on using technology that's ill-gotten. And I think, how do we do that? How do we make sure that's not happening? And we've been kind of gullible because I don't know, I guess we thought if we engaged with China for the last 10, 15 years, that eventually they'd be more like us. That in terms of, capitalism versus communism. That might have happened with capitalism, but not human rights.
That's right. I think that we have to do a few things. I think that first, with regard to people or entities or companies that are helping with the Chinese Communist Party's, for instance, genocide of the Uyghur people or engaging in forced labor, we've got to call them out, sanction them. We've got to do what it takes to both deter and punish those who would aid and abet these horrible practices. Secondly, I think that we have to do what the Biden administration has done, for instance, with regard to high-end semiconductors and semiconductor chips, which are used by the CCP to, essentially help to propel the People's Liberation Army's efforts with regard to their aggression against the U.S. Now, the good thing about that is that we work with our partners and allies and friends around the world to help to deny some of these high-end chips to the Chinese, and we're going to require that type of cooperation going forward. But I just like to turn to one thing, which is, in addition to doing this, we also spent a lot of time last night talking about upping our own game in the U.S. with regard to our own competitiveness. That means helping to upgrade the skills of our workforce and attracting the best and brightest talent from around the world to help us to outcompete the CCP.
Congressman Gallagher, that might be where some of the sides differ a little bit. The CHIPS Act, were you a proponent of that, Congressman Gallagher? Do you think the government can pick winners and losers?
I voted against it. I'm probably a bit more skeptical of industrial policy than my colleague. That being said, I think even that's an area where we can identify some bipartisan agreement. For example, as my colleague alludes to, we want to make sure that the recent export controls on chips that are key, particularly for AI, that there aren't loopholes in those, and we need to shore up the loopholes for so-called GPU chips. That's something we heard about in Silicon Valley. So even where we disagree, I think there's areas where we can refine our approach. And there's no question we want to diversify our dependence on Asia for high-end chips, for chips in general. More than anything, we just want to enhance deterrence across the Taiwan Strait so that the CCP doesn't invade Taiwan and completely disrupt the microelectronic global market. So even there, I see areas of agreement. Even on areas regarding high-end immigration, I think we can figure out a way within our trusted allies to have a better approach to pool talent so that we're competing as the free world, not just as America, and we don't descend into autarky.
But Congressman Krishnamoorthi, as open as we've been for the past 10 to 15 years, and you look at the multinationals with huge operations and interests in China, whether it be Apple or just take your pick. Is all that going to have to change? I mean, with what's on the horizon, we're not getting anywhere really with the Uyghur situation. But think about Taiwan, and think about just what we just heard Eric Schmidt say, that they're looking for global domination. What are we supposed to do? It's a daunting and very complicated and nuanced approach that all of us need to take. All of our companies.
You're 100% right, and I think companies are already doing that. You see that Apple is migrating a lot of their manufacturing, for instance, to India with regard to their iPhones. I think that there's some companies that are going to bring back some manufacturing to the U.S. or to our partners and friends. But this is already happening in the private sector. I think with regard to the federal government providing more guidance, I think that one thing that the chairman and I see is that one place where there's absolute agreement is that we cannot help to fund or to share technology with any entity that is going to engage in military or national security risks for the U.S. That is, I think, a bright red line that everyone agrees on right now.
Does TikTok represent such a threat, Congressman Gallagher, and do you agree with the governor of or the state of Montana?
TikTok does represent such a threat. We can't allow a Chinese-owned company, and TikTok is owned by ByteDance, and ByteDance is controlled by the CCP, to become the most dominant media platform in America. The issue is not just that they can exfiltrate data from your phone or track your location. It's that increasingly TikTok is a source of news, particularly for young Americans. Giving the CCP the ability to control news in America strikes me as one of the stupidest things we could possibly do. So we have to either ban it or force a sale. We've been working in a bipartisan way on that issue. This is a critical issue. We have to act before it's too late.
Very good, John. I was just saying, yeah, we get some pretty bad news in terms of bias from some of our own institutions. Now we got to worry about China too. I guess it's worse. Congressman, I want to thank you both, and it's an important issue and very complex, and at least it's bipartisan. Something is. Thanks, guys.